I'll return now to battleground Nova Scotia. That was an important election to Nova Scotians, of course, but also an important one for the polling industry and political geeks like us who like to talk about public opinion and how it impacts what political parties do. Well, it turns out none of the three pollsters active in the Nova Scotia race ran into any of the problems that several did in the Alberta and BC general elections, namely that the final polls before Election Day in BC and Alberta showed pretty much the opposite of what actually happened. But in Nova Scotia, the final numbers from our pollster, Abacus Data, were within 1 percentage point of what actually happened on E-Day, and that's about as bang on as you can get in the polling business. So congratulations to Abacus CEO David Coletto joining us here. And the other pollsters, too, were pretty within the margin of error. Everybody, it turned out the world unfolded as it should. So I wanted to say congratulations.
Thank you.
But also, now as we finally get a chance to do a little post-mortem and figure out why was it that the Liberals had such a handy victory? How did the New Democrats go from first to worst? And how did the PCs end up where they are? Let's start with the Libs.
And what we have is the advantage now of looking at the entire sample. So we were serving about 300 to 200 interviews a night.
And only reporting on the most recent little bits.
Exactly. So I brought them all together, and it allows us to look at some dynamics. So that first question, why did the Liberals do so well? And we talked a lot about this over the course of the week when we released the numbers, and they had an advantage in a number of areas. One of those that we didn't report on is what those that study elections call partisan or party identification. So it's different from are you going to vote for the party? It's do you feel closer or do you identify as either a Liberal, a New Democrat, or a Progressive Conservative? And you can see here when we asked that question of Nova Scotians, you can see the Liberals had a significant advantage over the other two
more
parties.
Liberals in Nova Scotia
at the time. Now, what's interesting, there's a debate about whether party ID changes or not.
Sure.
I think more and more it does, that the people aren't as attached to those political leanings as in the past. So that's first one. Coming to the election, the Liberals had a significant advantage on that party identification. We also talked about issues. The economy and jobs, healthcare, the top two issues. What this shows here is the percentage of people in the entire sample who picked these issues as their top issue. And the party, when we asked them who would best manage, for example, jobs in the economy, the party that led on that, so you can see Liberal, 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 Liberal. They had the advantage on all the key issues. So whether you cared about healthcare, whether you cared about jobs or the economy, throughout that final week of the campaign, the Liberals beat out both the Progressive Conservatives and the New Democrats. Now, it did tighten a little. We talked about that as we got closer to Election Day, but nonetheless, still a good advantage. Lastly, why did the Liberals win? Well, partly because they had the most popular leader as well. And you look at Stephen McNeil, you know, 54% of those that we surveyed over the course of that week had a positive impression. That's a plus 29. You can see there, Bailey didn't do poorly. Dexter had a more difficult time. You put those three factors together, leadership, issues, and just your partisan advantage, and there's your majority.
And just to broaden this out to around the country, the idea that most people identify as Liberals, that is your, quote, natural governing party issue, right? And that, of course, federally is what the Liberals were the natural governing party for the last century, and that's what Stephen Harper's project is, to get people to say, I'm a conservative on any given day, although I might go somewhere else.
And Tom Mulcair, because if you look at actually the 2011 academic Canadian election study, even though the New Democrats got significantly more votes than the Liberals, more Canadians identified as Liberal at the time of that election. So that's what's interesting is when you can identify as one party, but yet you vote for another. In Nova Scotia, that didn't happen. That things aligned well, and that's why the Liberals
We're getting off track a bit federally because we don't talk province, but that may also explain the snapback for the Liberals in the polls we're seeing now. Okay, let's leave that for another day, and let's go back to how does an NDP majority go from first to about as worst as you can get? Dexter himself losing his own seat.
Yeah, and I think there's two factors we talked about. One is that you had a credible alternative, which if you looked at British Columbia, Alberta, those were the challenges facing the Wild Rose Party in Alberta, the New Democrats in British Columbia, is that yes, people didn't deserve that their incumbent governments, the Progressive Conservatives or Liberals in those provinces, didn't deserve to be reelected, but on the other hand, they didn't. So we already talked about the Liberals, but when you ask voters, do the New Democrats deserve to be reelected? Among all of the respondents we talked to, only 23% said, yes, Dale Dexter deserves another shot at the job. But look at that second column. Those that voted NDP in 2009.
Not even half.
Not even half of them.
Yeah.
So how can you possibly win an election under these types of conditions?
Even a minority.
Even a minority. When you got a very popular opposition party and these kind of re-elect numbers.
And quickly, the PCs are the official opposition, going from 7 seats to 11. That's not a big number seat-wise, but enough to make them the official opposition.
And what was interesting in the polling is we were all surprised that our final poll showed the Progressive Conservatives tied or very close to the New Democrats. Now, this is a little confusing, but this represents those voters who voted for the PCs in the last election. And if you look at our first part, that first column, or those interviews we did in the first part of the week, only just about half of former PC voters said they were going to vote PC again.
Okay.
The second, as we got closer to election day, you can see that PC number gets higher, which means former progressive conservatives over the course of the week were coming home.
Yeah.
And so the progressive conservatives actually were able to pick up a little bit of voters from the New Democrats who may have voted NDP last time, but most importantly, they picked up their base, came back, and now they're the official opposition.
And now, and of course, that sets the stage for the next 4 years of political battles, regrouping and using that momentum for the PCs and Liberals. Don't blow it.
Hold on it.
Hold on. David Coletto, thank you so much.
Thanks, David.